and it's really lovely to meet you all this evening. I am going to keep this pretty casual. I only have 5 slides and 1 video, so you'll be very pleased to hear I am not going to bore you. This is more about us having a conversation, really, and you guys getting the opportunity to find out more and ask me questions. But yeah, so I'm Amy, and my role right now is that I am head of talent for a company called Framestore. So as head of talent, I do 2 things. So I look after all of our recruitment at every level, from entry level all the way through to senior, and I look after retention. So once we found all these amazing people to come join us, how do we get to stay? So how do we make Framestore a place that people want to come to work every day? So that's my job. A little bit more about Framestore. Let me get my very few slides loaded up for you. It's really slow, May. Don't know why. We've loaded it up several times already and it still wants to reload.
Here, I'll try and do it while you talk.
Yeah, so you can probably skip straight to the second slide once you do get it loaded. So yeah, so Framestore is a British company. We were founded in London a little bit over 30 years ago by 5 people. And we were founded mostly to produce computer graphics for music videos and commercials at the time, because it was, you know, the 80s and MTV was a thing and music videos were all the rage. So mostly we were producing computer graphics for those. But we've come a really long way since then. The presentation is still not loading. It's weird. We loaded it up in practice and it was there, and I don't know why it's not loading now. But yeah, we've come a long way. So now we still have our head office right here in London, but we also have offices in the US, in Canada, in India, and Australia as well. There we go. That's better. So yeah, you can skip straight to the second slide, which shows Framestore on day 1. There we go. Look, 1986 is such an 80s picture. They look like they should be entering the Eurovision Song Contest, I think. But yes, we employ a little bit over 3,000 people around the world now. And now we don't just produce computer graphics for music videos and commercials. We still do that. But actually, we now produce computer graphics for any screen you can think of. So whether that's a cinema screen or your tablet or your TV or a VR headset, a theme park ride, a large scale installation, name a screen essentially, and we produce computer graphics for those screens. And we're really lucky. So we are one of the top 5 visual effects studios in the world. And that means we get to work on some of the most high profile projects and brands in the world. So just using the example of our film work for you, here are just some of the projects that we've either delivered very recently or we're working on right now as I speak to you. And you can see everything there is something that you've heard of, you've seen, you want to see. So it's really high profile projects that we get to work on. Probably the best thing for me to do before I move on to more of the detail of the sort of different career opportunities and the different jobs and how it all sort of works is I'm going to play you the video that I have, because it talks a little bit more about the different kinds of work that Framestore does. And it also gives you examples of our work, and you'll see, even though you may not have heard of Framestore before today, you will definitely have seen Framestore's work somewhere. And I think it surprises people that they knew who Framestore were all along.
I was going to say, if you are a Marvel fan, then Framestore.
Okay, can everyone give me a thumbs up if you've seen Framestore's work before? Yeah, see, I knew it. You all knew who we were secretly. You just didn't know you knew who we were. And yes, for the eagle-eyed among you, the one thing that people normally take away from that video is that we are the people responsible for killing Dobby. So I'm really sorry that we did that. I apologize. So just going back, let's see if this loads again. It's going to whiz through again. I'm going to come to a slide when it decides to load that asks the question then, what is visual effects, like we asked you at the start. So I want to just sort of go into that in a bit more detail for you, especially as there were some of you on the call who had no idea what visual effects is. So you may hear two different terms used. You may hear the term special effects and you may hear the term visual effects. And quite often people use those to mean the same thing, but actually they're not the same thing at all. So special effects is anything that they do for real. So if you went down to a film or a TV set and you saw them creating a controlled explosion, or you saw them flipping a car, or you saw the actors and actresses on cables being flown around, all of that is what we call special effects, because it's stuff that they do for real on set. What we do at Framestore is visual effects. And so, as I said earlier, visual effects are completely computer generated images. So you may have heard the term CG or CGI before. That CG or CGI is visual effects, basically. They're the same thing. So you've got an example here on screen. So Winnie the Pooh and Piglet in the Christopher Robin movie are completely computer generated characters throughout the film, because sadly our cuddly toys don't really come to life when we go to sleep at night. So obviously we have to create these characters in the computer. So how do we go about doing that? What are the different jobs? What's really interesting about visual effects is that it's very much a team pursuit. So a character like Winnie the Pooh, for example, might have had 40 different people work on him to get him on the screen for you, the audience, to see him. And those people all have very sort of specific jobs in that process. So we always start with drawing. So the first department that we have that gets involved is our art department. They're still drawing digitally. They're not drawing with pencil and paper. They're drawing in Photoshop or Illustrator or those kind of things. But we start there because they're really quick to produce. So it's a quick way of getting the director to understand what we're going to go ahead and make sure that they're bought into the design and the look and everything that we're going to make. And then we move into actually making the things in the computer. So we have a team called modeling, and they're the ones who actually create the basic shapes, if you like. So the actual anatomy and body of a character, or they might be modeling sets or props or environments. They model all sorts of different things, whatever we need to be computer generated in the scene. We then have to obviously give those objects color. And we also have to give them texture, because nothing in this life is ever completely smooth. It always has rough edges and things going on. And that's done by our texturing team. We then, if it's a character or if it's a vehicle, something that's got to move, it's obviously got to have the mechanism to move. So we then have a team called rigging, who are the ones who put the muscles and the mechanics or whatever it is into that object to allow it to move. We then have an animation team who actually make it move. And then we have some of the more technical departments. So all of those departments I've described so far, people in those departments tend to be more artistic in nature, and they tend to have come from some kind of artistic background. Once we've got past animation, we move into the slightly more technical departments. So the first up being, if it's a character like Winnie the Pooh, obviously Winnie the Pooh has fur, and he also has a furry jumper as well. And that's all done by a department that we call creature effects. And creature effects specialize in hair and fur and cloth. That's it. That's all they do. But it's a really important department, because actually it's what brings the characters to life. You know, if they were moving around on screen and their fur and their clothes weren't moving, the audience wouldn't believe they were real. So it's really important we get that right. And it's complex because a character like Paddington or Rocket Raccoon, for example, they can have up to 6 billion individual hairs on their body. So obviously we can't animate each individual hair because we'd be there for centuries. So we have to do it as a simulation in the computer. And that means that people in that department, as well as having a creative eye, all our departments have to have a creative eye. They also use maths because they do some equations. They use physics because they have to understand how gravity and velocity and things like that affect the motion of the fur and the clothes. And they also use some coding in Python as well, because they actually have to script things in the computer to get the simulations to work. And that's a really similar skill set to our effects team, who are the ones who add, they would argue, all the cool stuff, because they add fire and smoke and explosions and destruction and any kind of sort of natural phenomena that we need to add into the scene. That's what our effects team do. And exactly the same as creature effects, they're using maths and physics and coding to do that. And then finally, we obviously have to make all of those objects look like they were in the scene all along so that the audience doesn't spot them. So our lighting team obviously have to replicate whatever lighting conditions they were on set. So whether that was studio lights or whether they were filming outside or whatever, onto our computer generated objects so that they look like they were under those same lighting conditions. So again, there's quite a lot of technical understanding of how light works, you know, color, direction, reflection, refraction, all of those things, but also a really close understanding of how cameras work as well, because obviously the way a camera reads light isn't necessarily exactly the same as how light is to our eyes. In reality, cameras read light in a different way, so they have to understand all of that. And then our compositors take everything we've built in the computer and everything they filmed on set, and they put that back together to make the final picture that you guys see on screen as the audience. So again, quite a similar skill set to our lighting team, but also a bit more, they have a bit more artistic skill as well, our compositors, because, well, they have to understand image composition, hence their job title, and what makes for a really attractive picture to an audience. So that's a really quick whiz through all of our departments. I've now got some questions for you, so I'm not boring you to tears. So I'm going to start with, which one? Yeah, I'm going to start with this one. So how many people do you think work on a typical visual effects project? So given all that I've told you about all of those departments, and you know, the fact that every project has to go through all of those departments, how many people do you think we have working on a typical project?
How long does a project take, Amy?
It depends on what project it is. So the shortest would be you know, a very sort of bog standard commercial. So if you think of something like a Pantene advert where all we're doing is making their hair more beautiful, yes, people, it's not the Pantene, it's us, then we might work on that for like a week, 2 weeks tops. If it's a slightly more complex commercial,
so like Winnie the Pooh, the film.
Winnie the Pooh, we worked on Winnie the Pooh for about 12 months before it came out at the cinema. Okay, so we've got a real mix here. That no one's really close. It's normally, oh, hang on, there's more answers that I haven't seen. There we go. So towards the end, people got closer. So yeah, the people who said somewhere between 200, 250, you are pretty spot on. That's fairly average for a film project. Is sort of 200 to 250 people working on that project. And as I said, 9 to 12 months, typically, those people will be working on a film project. Okay, so of then those 200, 250 people, how many of them do you think actually have visual effects or computer animation degrees? What percentage? Give me a percentage of the 200, 250. Lots of people going quite high, 50, 60, 40. Lots of high guesses. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to tell you the people who said 25-30%. You are correct. That is about right. So it's surprisingly low, you know, given that it's quite a specialist job. Actually, only about 25-30% of our crew have specific qualifications in visual effects or computer animation. So then, of the rest of them, there was one, there we go. What other subjects do you think people might have studied then? So if only 25-30% of them had visual effects or computer animation degrees, what else have people studied? Any guesses? Art, maths, photography, all of those. Film studies, yep. Film production, yep. Computer science, yeah. Yeah. All of the above. And actually a lot more as well. What's really interesting is that we have almost every qualification you can think of represented, including people who have zoology degrees, who now work in our rigging department because they understand anatomy. We actually have a NASA rocket scientist working for us in one department. But on the other hand, we have a world-renowned cartoonist working for us in another department. We have people working for us who did business and economics qualifications. Like literally, we run the gamut of every qualification. And I think that's a really important thing to say to you, is that in the creative industries, there is no one route in. There are, whatever route works for you, you will find a way in, because we like that mix of people. And also to add, 10% of our staff have no higher qualification at all, and we're working to increase that as well, because more and more people are joining us on apprenticeships. So I just want to flag that. Right, really quickly, also to say, if all of this has sounded cool, but you're like, I don't have a creative bone in my body, don't forget that we're a business. And as a business, we have all of the usual departments you would find in any business, in any industry. And so there are ways to work in the creative industries that don't involve being a creative yourself. And certainly that's my experience. And then the final slide, I don't think works. No, it doesn't. So I'm going to close that down and just talk, a little bit about routes in. So I mentioned that apprenticeships are an increasing thing for the industry, and more people are coming in that way. So apprenticeships are designed to be an alternative way into university, for anyone who doesn't want to go to university, can't go to university, whatever. But we also obviously have internships, we have graduate programs, and we have trainee programs as well, which are designed for someone at any point. So that could be someone who's 45 and wants a career change. It could be literally anybody. So there are lots and lots and lots of different ways into the industry, depending on what works for you. So I don't want to use up all the time. I want to give you guys a chance to ask me questions. So I can see there's 4 things in the chat. So let's have a look. I don't think someone with an English degree, though. I have an English degree. Just like to put that out there. But actually in production, which is our sort of project management team, if you like, so sort of the administrative team that supports the artists, we have lots of people with humanities degrees, English, history, economics, business studies, all sorts of things like that. So absolutely there's a place for someone with an English degree. Where are we based? So the office in London is in Chancery Lane. But you may have noticed I'm clearly not in Chancery Lane. So we're, like most companies now, we are hybrid. So everyone's doing some days in the office, some days at home. So what's the hardest part of our job? My job or the visual effects artist job? This is 2 different things. I would say for the visual effects artist, the hardest thing is, as I've described to you, they're all artists at heart. They all like to make nice images, but they're working for a client. And so sometimes they have to make something that they don't think looks very nice, but it's what the client wants. And I think that's definitely the hardest part of their job, when they're like, but I could do it better. Just let me do it better. But it's, the client wants something. And so often, you may have gone to a film and been like, oh, the CG was terrible in that. And so often it's not the fault of the artists. It's because that's what the director asked us to make. So we made it, even though we knew it looked terrible as well. So I think that's hard. And then you want to know the hardest part of my job. At the moment, it's finding people. That's the other thing I should flag to you. Our industry is growing, and it is growing faster than we're making talent to join it, basically. So there are so many opportunities right now to join the industry. Everyone's looking for talent. There isn't enough talent out there right now. So that's definitely the hardest part of my job right now, is trying to actually find enough people. Daisy, you put example Sonic the Hedgehog. Was that following?
I think bad CGI. Is that right?
Oh, yes. Okay, there we go. Okay, that was in response to that. Okay. Freddie, so does Framestore work for independent films too? No, not because we don't want to, but because we're so large that we're actually not very cost effective for an indie producer. Their budgets are so small and we cost too much money for them. So yeah, they tend to work with much smaller visual effects studios of sort of 20, 30 people rather than a big studio like Framestore. Are all the positions full-time jobs? Yes, they're all full-time jobs. Some of them are project-based. So about 2/3 of our staff are permanent and about 1/3 are project-based. But like I said, that still means you would be on a 9 to 12-month contract as an employee with us. It's just that we don't always need exactly the same number of people. And what kind of roles are we looking to fill currently? That's a great question. It's almost everything. So we don't have as many positions right now in those early departments I talked about. So modeling and texturing and rigging, those sort of early departments, we're kind of okay there at the moment. But at the other end of things, in creature effects, in compositing, we've got loads of positions available. Production is something we're always hiring for because there's never enough production people to manage all the work we have going through. To give you some sense of scale, right now, we've got 23 film projects going through, and that doesn't include the theme park rides, the VR experiences, the commercials, everything else that's going through. In film alone, we have 23 projects. So we need a lot of project management people to get all of that work through. Is training provided? Yes. So if you come in at an entry level in any of these departments, two things happen. One is you'll be given a dedicated buddy or mentor who is your person to help you and show you where things are and get you up to speed. But also we have an in-house learning and development team whose job it is to make sure that everyone gets the training they need, not just to do their job, but also the sort of creative training, the inspiration and the upskilling in order to be able to progress their career and all of those kind of things. So yeah, we're really dedicated to training people. And yes, thank you, May. Our internship is also open for applications right now.
Yeah, so go on the Eric app, download the app, find Framestore, and you will find the internship opportunity. I think the deadline's next week, isn't it, Amy? Or this week?
Yeah, it's next week. Yeah, I think it's next week. And also to say that if the apprenticeships were interesting to you, we should be opening for applications for the apprenticeships by the end of May. So for that one, the best thing you can do is I will probably give it to May to put on the app as well. So you can definitely find it on the Eric app, but you can also register your interest at that website. If you go to their website and go to the visual effects apprenticeships tab, you can register your interest. And if you register your interest, you'll be notified when we open for applications. So.
Someone says, do you have a PR team?
Oh, yes, we do. Good question. Yeah, if you're interested in marketing, yeah, we call it marketing, but they do PR and communications and marketing and all of those things. Yeah, absolutely, we do. And they're always looking for help as well.
I was going to say, I don't know if you guys remember. Does anyone remember seeing Audrey Hepburn in the reel? But Amy can say this one. But they basically, because obviously she's no longer with us, but her whole face, body, everything was CGI.
Yeah, and it was complicated because so her image is owned by her family. So they have like copyright on the use of her image. So it's basically to protect her. So you couldn't stick Audrey Hepburn in a, I'm trying to think of a really in a Prodigy music video, for example. Like they can, you can only use her image in ways that the family approve, right? And so in recreating her, we obviously had to get sign off from the director of the commercial that they were happy, but we also had to get sign off from, I think it's her nephew who owns her image. So yeah, her nephew had to sign off that that was her and that looked like her enough that he was happy for it to be used. So it was quite a fascinating project.
That's mad. Because that's what happens sometimes when, actors unfortunately, die mid production, and then you have to create CGI of them. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if they die unexpectedly, we have to then replace them digitally for the rest of the film. But what's really interesting and a bit spooky as well is a lot of actors and actresses have cottoned on to this now because they can make a lot of money after they're dead by still being in commercials and films and stuff for their estate. Obviously, they're not making the money, but their estate will make the money. So what a lot of them are doing now is once a year, they will go and get themselves body scanned, which is how we make what we call a digital double. So a digital version of a real human is we have 88 cameras on a scaffolding rig, just normal cameras like you would have at home. But we have a piece of software that allows us to take a photograph with all 88 cameras at the same time. And that gives us a 360-degree photograph of that person with all of their exact body proportions and details and stuff, so we can replicate them. And a lot of actors and actresses now are having that done once a year and just having it stored so that when they die, you could quite literally go, I'd like Jennifer Lawrence when she was 29 in my film, and we go and we pull up that file and we make the digital double of Jennifer Lawrence when she was 29 and we whack her in a film. So actors and actresses actually aren't going to die anymore. Their physical bodies will die, but their existence in projects won't necessarily. So that it's
mad.
Yeah.
Wait, do they need like someone to do the body though, like the movement?
No, we animate that, right? Our animators do that.
So you don't even need any actors?
No.
Oh, if anyone is an aspiring actor or actress,
get yourself body scanned.
Okay, well, does anyone else have any? Oh, someone's
do we do part-time internships? So our internship actually is 8 weeks over the summer. So it's designed to be in your summer holiday. It's not during term time. So it starts the first week of July and runs for 8 weeks. And it's a paid internship. We also provide accommodation in central London for anyone who doesn't have somewhere to be when they're not in halls. So yeah, upload your mind and body to the cloud. All those films that were like, one day we can come back in like a robot body. I don't know how far away we are from that. It's all a bit creepy. Yeah.
Well, that is mad. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. It's been so quick, but yeah, thank you to Amy for hosting this amazing session. You can stay on and ask some questions if you want, but we will, I know we're 5 minutes early, but yeah, have a great evening, everyone. And it's amazing that 7 of you now, or 6 of you now want to work in Framestore, so that's really cool. Yeah, so stay on, ask your questions. Oh.
Yeah, it's just me. Can I just ask a question, please?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that session. That was like really interesting. My mind was just completely blown by the body scanning thing, like crazy. So there was a mention of like a PR team, basically, which I'm quite interested in, and I was just wondering if like there was more information or like any further details that could be shared on that.
Sure. So what our marketing team do is, well, they do a whole variety of things. Like I said, they kind of, in other companies, you might have separate sort of PR and communication teams, but for us, it's all one team that we call marketing. So they do everything from managing our website and our socials and any sort of external facing communications, email roundups for clients, those kind of things. They also handle our presence at events. So if we're going to either sort of conferences or job fairs, or if we're going to awards like Cannes or the BAFTAs or whatever, they manage all of that. They also handle our submissions for awards, because obviously we have to submit work to qualify for things like the BAFTAs, so they handle all of those submissions. But then internally, they also handle things like our company brand. So they handle all of the branding of our offices and all of that kind of stuff. They handle our brand from a recruitment perspective. So, anything we're communicating externally for recruitment, they handle all of that. They also handle things like, internal newsletters and communications, helping teams that want to put information out into the company to make that look company branded and all of that stuff. So they have a really wide reaching remit. And typically the way into that department is to come in as marketing assistant or marketing coordinator, where you get exposed to all those different things and assist with all those different things. And then you sort of figure out from there, into sort of which area of what they do you're most interested in. Right now, actually, we do have a job available if you are interested, where we don't really need someone with any experience necessarily. It's more we need someone who's keen, enthusiastic, and wants to get stuck in. We're actually in the process of moving to a whole new website, a brand new Framestore website, and we need someone to help us manage the content, because obviously we've got to move the content from the old website to the new website, which is structured completely differently. We've got to make sure all of the content works. We may need to create some new content if things don't work, all of those kind of things. But we need someone to kind of manage that whole process. So if that's something that might be interesting, my email is in the chat. If you go up sort of 4 or 5 comments, it's there in the chat. Feel free to email me if that's interesting. But I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. Because I just recently finished a PR and communications internship, and I'm just kind of looking to go more into that sort of thing. And what you've just described, which is basically kind of trying out different things until I sort of figure out what I want to do exactly in PR. It sounds very interesting, because obviously the more I can do within PR and marketing, that sort of thing really interests me. So I'll get your email and definitely get in touch with you.
Perfect. Great.
You say it was up here. I can't see it.
I'll put it in again.
Oh.
Thanks, Farmer. Well, yeah. Anyone else have anything? Any other questions? Oh, Ruth. How would someone who's employed be able to participate in the internship?
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to participate in our in-person internship if you're already employed, unfortunately. But what we did during the pandemic was we moved our internship virtual, and we ran it as more of a competition that was sort of team-based. So we had people set themselves up in teams, and then we set them a brief, and we supported them with that brief, and we gave them access to Framestore staff to help them and those kind of things. We're looking at that proved to be really successful. Obviously, it didn't replace the experience of being in person and those kind of things, but we are looking at whether we could still run something like that allows more people to participate in a more flexible way, not actually having to be in the office for a set period of time. So what I would say is keep your eyes peeled on our website, because we are hoping to run something along those lines later in the year, that might suit better for someone who's actually employed.
Amazing. Anyone else? You can just come off your thing. But if not, you have Amy's email. You can bombard her with lots of emails. Oh, last question. Should we last one more question, and then I know that Amy probably needs to go get her dinner or something.
Glass of wine.
Yeah. Okay, Wappa. What is your company culture like?
That's a great question. So Framestore is one of the few remaining privately owned visual effects companies. So most visual effects companies now are owned by big studios. So they're owned by Disney or Technicolor, or, you know, the sort of big film studios that you've heard of. Framestore isn't. Framestore's still privately owned. And to me, what that means is we don't have that kind of big corporate culture. Although we're a big company with lots of people, and when you're a big company, you do have to have processes, obviously, because you can't just have 3,000 people going nuts, because nothing would ever get done. So we have processes, but what we don't really have is hierarchy. You know, a good idea at Framestore could come from anyone, and everyone is fine. You know, it's like, oh, that idea came from that junior over there. Awesome, well done, you. Like, let's make that happen. There's no sort of hierarchy in the sense of people at the top are telling everyone else what to do. Quite the reverse more often than not. And also, it's the kind of company, there are so many people in the company, myself included, who have sort of invented careers for themselves. Like, there are so many of us who are working in jobs that we've created because we found a bunch of stuff we were interested in and could do for the company, and so we went and did that, and then they went, oh, we should probably give that a title. So it's the kind of company that you can make opportunities for yourself in, and that's what's kept me there so long, is that I don't think that's that common actually these days, that you can sort of go, oh, I'm interested in that thing, and just go follow that interest and see where it leads you, you know. So for me, yeah, the culture is innovative, it's creative, it's flexible, it's, yeah, not hierarchical. And yeah, I really enjoy it. We're working really hard on our inclusion as well. You know, ultimately we're a tech company in the sense that, you know, everyone there is working with computers, and so we suffer from what the rest of the tech industry does, where we're not as diverse as we want to be. But I work on that every single day with a team around me, and we're trying to make that better, and we're really committed to that. So hopefully the more people who join us who are also committed to that, we can make it better. So I hope that answers your question, Waffa.
I was going to say, I can vouch for that, because we've worked closely with Framestore for a couple of years now, and yeah, they're very, very cool company. I always say, if I could redo my career, I would work at Framestore. You need to get that testimonial, Amy.
Yeah, I should definitely.
Anyway, thank you everyone so much for joining. I know that, like, we're 15 minutes late, but so nice to see that everyone's got so many questions. Thank you to Amy.